There's a hotel with infinite rooms, and tonight, every single one is full. And yet, if you walk up to the front desk, the manager will still find you a bed. Not by breaking a rule, not by turning anyone away. He'll do something that sounds impossible, and somehow it will work perfectly. That's the strange part nobody warned you about when they first tell you this story. Infinity doesn't behave the way your instincts think it should. Picture it. A century ago, the German mathematician David Hilbert needed a way to make people feel the size of infinity in their gut, not just understand it on paper. So, he invented a hotel. An infinite hotel with an infinite number of rooms, run by a night manager who takes his job far too seriously for a building that, technically, can never turn a profit. One night, every room is booked, no vacancies. A man walks in anyway and asks for a room. A reasonable manager would say no. This manager doesn't. He picks up the phone and asks the guest in room 1 to move to room 2. The guest in room 2 moves to room 3. Room 3 moves to room 4. Every guest, forever, shifts over by exactly one room. Since there's no final room, no guest is ever asked to disappear off the end of the number line. Room 1 empties out, and the new arrival checks in. It feels like a trick. It isn't, and once you see how it works, you start to realize the hotel can absorb almost anything. A tour bus pulls up, 40 passengers, all wanting rooms. The manager shifts every guest from room N to room N plus 40, and 40 rooms open up at the front, just like that. Simple enough. But then something bigger arrives, a bus with infinitely many seats, every one of them filled. Infinite new guests on top of an already full hotel. This is where most people's brains start to resist. How do you make room for infinity inside something that's already infinite and already full? The manager doesn't panic. He asks every current guest to move from room N to room 2N, room 1 to room 2, room 2 to room 4, room 3 to room 6. Every guest lands on an even-numbered room, and because the doubling never runs out of room numbers to land on, nobody gets stranded. Suddenly, every odd-numbered room, and there are infinitely many of them, stands empty. The infinite bus unloads, and every passenger finds a home. The hotel isn't more full than it was before. It isn't less full either. It's exactly as full as it always was, which is to say, completely, and yet somehow with room to spare. That's not a contradiction. That's just what infinity does when you actually sit with it instead of skimming past it. Word gets around, because word always does. People start showing up from everywhere, and the hotel keeps absorbing them, night after night, banking an infinite number of dollars and still somehow never turning a profit that makes sense to a normal accountant. And then one night, the manager looks out the window and sees something that should end his career. Not one infinite bus, an infinite line of them, each one packed with an infinite number of passengers. For a moment, even he doesn't know what to do. If he can't seat them, the hotel loses everything. So does he. Then he remembers something proven more than 2,000 years ago by a mathematician named Euclid, in a world that had never heard of hotels or buses or infinity as anything but a philosophical headache. Euclid showed that there is no end to the prime numbers, 2, 3, 5, 7, 11, on, forever, without repeating and without running out. So the manager builds a system. Every current guest gets reassigned to 2 raised to the power of their old room number. The guest from room 7 now lives in room 2 to the 7th power, room 128. Then he takes the first infinite bus and assigns each passenger to 3 raised to the power of their seat number. The second bus gets powers of 5, the third powers of 7. Every bus gets its own prime, climbing upward forever, 11, 13, 17, without limit. Because of how prime numbers multiply, none of these room numbers ever collide. Every guest, from every bus, in an infinite line of infinite buses, gets a room that belongs to no one else. Some rooms, like room 6, never get used at all, since 6 isn't a pure power of any single prime. But nobody's counting the empty rooms. Everybody who needed a bed found one. This only works, though, because this particular infinity is what mathematicians call countable. The whole numbers, one after another, forever. The moment you step into a different kind of infinity, the kind that includes every number between 1 and 2, every fraction, every irrational point on the line, the tricks stop working. There's no way to line those up one by one and shift them over. That hotel, if it existed, would have rooms in the basement with negative numbers, rooms numbered in fractions where the guest always suspects he got less space than his neighbor, rooms marked with the square root of 2 and with pi, where people expect a slice of pie with their reservation. No night manager, however dedicated, would take that job, not even for infinite pay. So maybe that's the part worth sitting with, long after the hotel fades from view. Somewhere between one room and the next, between one guest and the one still waiting outside, there's a version of infinity patient enough to make space for everyone who asks. And somewhere just beyond that, there's a version too vast for even the cleverest mind to organize at all. Which kind, you have to wonder, does your own life resemble tonight?